This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
It's really an honor to be here today. You who have dedicated your lives for Chinuch Habanim v'Habanot, you're the heroes of the Jewish people. Nothing short of that. But I would like to share with you the vital importance of Chinuch in everybody's life, in our own lives. Let's go back to the beginning of creation. And let's try to paint a very vivid picture of how critical Chinuch is, even for the most basic, simple values and ideals. Adam Harishon is put in the Garden of Eden, and God comes to him, and he tells him 7 things. The Sheva Mitzvot B'nei Noach, the 7 Noachide laws, among which is Shvichut Damim, murder. And what happens? His own son, in the very beginning of the world, Cain, goes and he murders his brother Hevel. How in the world did that happen? Cain knew very well he wasn't allowed to do this. We could safely presume that if God told Adam Harishon about the 7 Noachide laws, immediately Adam went to Cain and he taught him these 7 things. So that means as soon as Cain was born, Adam Harishon said, listen, it's a wonderful world. It's a beautiful world. There are not that many restrictions here. Just do me a favor. Don't kill. And what does Cain do? Within the very beginning of creation, Cain takes the life of his own brother. How did that happen? The Midrash asks that question. And the Midrash says something stunning. Says the Midrash, how did Cain kill Hevel? Lo hayalo mimi lilmod. He had no one to learn from. Cain had no one to learn from. What does that mean, Cain had no one to learn from? Adam Harishon told him, don't do it. What do you mean he had no one to learn from? How about his father, his teacher? What do our sages mean that Cain had no one to learn from? But if you think about it, the answer is very powerful. The answer is, let's try to outline the very first day of creation, hour by hour. You know, the Gemara tells us in Masechta Sanhedrin, the very first day consisted of 12 hours. In the first hour, God took the dust and the dirt and he made a mound out of it. In the second hour, he formed the image of Adam Harishon. In the third hour, he outlined his limbs. In the fourth hour, he put in the soul. In the fifth hour, Adam stood up tall. In the sixth hour, he named all the animals. In the seventh hour, he got married. Says the Gemara, Shminit, in the 8th hour, Alu lemita shnayim v'yardu arba'ah. In the 8th hour, he got married. And within the hour, they began with 2 and they ended as 4. Which means Cain and Hevel were born as adults. Within 1 hour, can you imagine all the tsar gidul banim? 1 hour. This is very powerful. Says Rabbi Elia Brudny, do you know what went wrong with Cain? What went wrong with Cain is that when Adam told him, don't kill, he knew Adam said don't kill. He knew exactly what killing was. But you know he was missing? He was missing childhood. He was missing adolescence. He was missing one word, Chinuch. Chinuch. You could write on the board, don't do this. You could say, don't do this. You could teach, do A, do B. You could tell them, this is what we want, this is what we don't want. It's meaningless. It has no impact. People don't learn by what you say. People don't learn by what you write on the board. People need chinuch. They need to be trained. They need to be initiated. They need to be conditioned. It doesn't help to teach, to say, to write. People need chinuch. We all have a yetzer hara. We all have an ego. We all have to be trained to do the right thing. It's not enough to know what the right thing is. Every human being needs chinuch. We need childhood. We need adolescence. We need teachers not to tell us, not to write for us, to train us, initiate us in the right path of life. You know, it's amazing The Ksava HaKabbalah teaches us that Cain learned the lesson very quickly. You know that Cain had a son? Does anybody remember what Cain named his son? He named his son Chinuch. And then Cain acquired a city. And you know what the name of the city was? What name did he give the city? Chanoich. Why? Why would he name his son Chanoich? Why did he name the city Chanoich? Because Cain realized that what he was missing in life was his problem was he was born as an adult. And he never had chinuch. And if you don't have chinuch, you will never reach the levels, you will never ingrain within yourself the ideals that you need to. And therefore he named his son Chanoich, and he named the city Chanoich. Let me share with you a few thoughts about effective teaching. I'll tell you something that I noticed, tell you something personal. I've spoken to many audiences, adults, seniors, teenagers, boys, girls, seminary girls. That's not my thing, okay? Audiences of all stripes and affiliations. One time I had the opportunity to speak to seminary girls. So I'm thinking, what am I going to talk to seminary girls about? Whenever you speak to an audience, you want to establish some kind of connection with them. So it just happens to be that a few nights before, I dropped my own daughter off in the airport. She should go to Israel for the year to go to seminary. And the Friday night before my daughter went to seminary, I'm making Kiddush. And it was heartbreaking to me. I'm going to miss my daughter so much. I'm not going to see her the whole year. So I told these girls, when I was making Kiddush Friday night, I was crying when I was making Kiddush. And then I gave them the shir. It was before Yom Naram, inspirational words about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. And one after one, at the end of the talk, the girls lined up and they said, "Oh, thank you, Rabbi Glatstein. By the way, I wish somebody would have cried when I went to seminary." And I'm thinking to myself, that's a very telling comment that they said, "I wish somebody would have cried when they went to seminary." But then I'm thinking, was my shir so incomprehensible that the only thing they got out of it was the off-the-cuff remark that I made, that I cried when I dropped off my daughter, when I cried the kiddush that I made Friday night before I dropped off my daughter. I gave a whole shir, it's Elul, it's before Rosh Hashanah, I gave them divrei hisorerut, I gave words of inspiration, and the only thing they got out of it was an off-the-cuff remark. And then I was thinking about it, how often it is I could give a shir, and the comments I get are about something, most often, that I didn't mean to say. I just said what we call agavorcha. In Lashon HaKodesh we call it Mesiach Lefi Tuma. And then I realized that's exactly the point. People are not influenced by your prepared talk. Your students will not be influenced, very possibly, by your prepared lesson, by the curriculum, by what you write on the blackboard. Because people are not influenced by what you say, they're influenced by who you are. And when I say something agavorcha that I didn't prepare, that just slipped out, that's not what I said. That's me. And people are not influenced by what you say, they're influenced by who you are. How often we prepare that lesson, and you do need to prepare. How often we're careful about what we say, what we write on the board, when more often than not, 5 years later, 10 years later, what they're going to carry with them is not your talk, not your rehearsed class, but something you said to them, agavorcha, that you didn't even mean to say. In halacha, there is a halachic status to this kind of remark. It's called Mesiach Lefi Tumai. You know what Mesiach Lefi Tumai is? Normally, in testimony, if a Gentile comes into a court, or someone who's disqualified to testify comes into a court, we will not accept their testimony. But if they're just having a conversation, and they slip in, so-and-so did this happened to so-and-so, and they didn't mean to say that, even if they're ordinarily disqualified to testify, that testimony is admissible because it's Mesiach Lefi Tumai. And that's a very powerful element of Chinuch Habanim, whether for your students or for your own children. Poor Noach. The man gave the longest talk in the history of the world. He was giving a drasha for 120 years. You would think he would have many chassidim. You would think he had many Talmidim. You would think he influenced so many people. How many people did Noach influence in his 120-year drasha? Nobody. It fell on deaf ears. Avraham Avinu, the Rambam says, influenced tens of thousands of people. What was the problem with Noach? Why couldn't Noach influence anybody? You know, Rav Moshe Scherer has a sefer, it's called B'Shnei Einayim. And he tells a story about his own childhood in yeshiva. Thinking back and remembering when he was a kid in the early days of America, almost no one in his class remained religious. And he was thinking about it. Why is that? What happened to his class? And he remembers a while later he met a particular teacher, and the teacher was not observant at all anymore. And he asked the teacher, you know, you don't keep Torah mitzvot? Why not? You were our teacher. So the teacher said, look, I needed to make a living, I needed to make a parnasah, so I taught in the Talmud Torah. But I didn't believe in that stuff. And then Rabbi Shaarei realized what happened to his class. Because it's not what the teacher teaches, it's whether the teacher believes in the message that they teach. Chazal say that when the rain started to fall, Noach didn't want to go into the teva. God said, get in there already, what are you waiting for? And Noach went in, mipnei mei hamabul. Says Rashi, why didn't he go in right away? Af Noach miketane amanahaya. Noach himself didn't believe fully that the Mabul was going to come. It's no wonder then that Noach was not successful in influencing anyone. You think a teacher could teach, you know what? You better behave, you better shape up, you better get your act together. The Mabul is coming, the Mabul is coming, the Mabul is coming. Noach didn't believe fully the Mabul was coming. And therefore neither did anybody else. The main ingredient, if you want to be successful in teaching students, okay, I'm going to tell you something now. You might not like it. Teachers give out sheets. Say the sheets at the Shabbos table. By the way, the parents come with sheets, and the parents bring home sheets that they picked up in shul, and the parents read the sheets, and the students read the sheets, and the parents say, in my sheets it says this, and the students say, in my sheets it says that. Nobody cares what it says in any sheets. You think anyone's influenced by sheets? It's not about what it says on the paper. Nobody cares what it says on sheets, on pieces of paper. It's about, do you, Rebbe, Morah, if you say it over with conviction, if you believe it, belev shalem, if it's v'hayu hadvarim ha'ela, asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha, if it's on your heart, v'shinantam levanecha, it will go into the hearts of the student. But it's not that important what's on the blackboard or what's on the sheet. What's coming out of your heart is the message, the natural overflow from who you are, what you believe, what's inside of your mind and leiv. Then it will enter the heart of the student. You know, the whole system of teaching in the Jewish people shifted dramatically after the Chet HaEgel. Do you know that originally, who did the avodah in the Beit HaMikdash in the Mishkan? The Bechorim, the firstborn. And then things changed. From now on, it was not in the hands of the firstborn anymore. From now on, it went to the family of the Leviim, the Levites. And the Chizkuni wants to know, what happened? Originally, the firstborn, and then everything changed, and it went to the Leviim. Chizkuni says, that's because the system of the firstborn was a big problem. You know why? You know what the problem was? So the kid who's the firstborn, Reuven, comes home. He says, Dad, I'm the firstborn. I have to do the avodah. So Dad says, great. The thing is, I'm the thirdborn. So I'm going to go to Barnes & Noble. Does that even exist? I don't know. When I was a kid, they had bookstores. I don't know if they still exist. Yeah? They still have it. So Dad goes to Barnes & Noble. And Dad gets avodah in the Mishkan for dummies. And he brings it home. And he starts reading to his kid, okay, when you do the avodah, you wash your hands, and make sure you turn to the right first, and make sure you shech the animal. And the kid's looking at his dad, he's saying, look, you don't do this yourself. You expect me to really learn in a meaningful way from a book or from what you tell me? This is not going to work. The problem with the system of the Bechar is, if I'm a Bechar and my father is not a Bechar, then I have to learn from what my father tells me. Nobody really learns from what they're told. People learn from what they see. And if I'm a Bechar and my father is not a Bechar, this is not going to work. So they had to change the system of Chinuch and Klal Yisrael. That from now on, the avodah had to be Levi. Because if you're a Levi, guess what? Your dad's a Levi. And his dad was a Levi. And now your father doesn't have to say anything. Now you just go to the Beit HaMikdash with the father. And the father doesn't say a word. He goes to the kiyar and he washes his hand. And then he takes the animal and he shechs it. And the kid observes and he watches what his father does. Not what his father says, but who his father is. That's chinuch. It's not the blackboard. It's not the parsha sheet. It's you. Now let's talk a little bit about parenting, because, a Rebbe and a Morah is a father and mother as well. Avi Rechev Yisrael. A father is a Rebbe, and a Rebbe is a father. But what I would like to share with you is, what is a father? And this is a very surprising definition. In other words, if I were to ask you, please define for me, what does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to be a mother? Give me one word. Many people would say a father is a teacher, is a guide, is an instructor. A mother is a role model. A mother is a caretaker. Let's define, what does it mean to be a parent? Let's look no further than Rashi in this week's Parsha. Rashi, of course, the Shita Mekubetzet writes, Rashi was Rabban ve'avihen shel Yisrael, the rabbi and the father of the Jewish people. So Yosef reveals himself to the brothers, and the brothers are getting really nervous. The brothers are, sittering, they're shaking. What's Yosef going to do? Is Yosef going to take retribution against them? And Yosef says, don't sweat it. You didn't send me here. God sent me here. Vayesimeni le'av le'paro. God made me Pharaoh's father. Comes Rashi, and Rashi defines for us, what does it mean to be a father? Says Rashi, le'av le'chaver u'lepatron. A friend and a supporter. Says Rav Shimon Schwab, from the simple comment of Rashi we learn what the Torah definition of a father is. A father is not a guide, it's not a role model, it's not a mashgiach, it's not a teacher, it's a friend. It's a friend. And that might sound surprising to you. That might be shocking to you. But that's what Rashi says. The definition of parent is friend. Says Rav Shimon Schwab, do you want a barometer whether you're a good parent or not? You ready for this frightening barometer? Says Rav Shimon Schwab, the barometer of whether you're a good father or mother or not is, am I my child's best friend in the whole world? That's the only barometer. In that context, you could be a teacher, and you could be a guide, and you could be a role model, and you could be an instructor, but it must be in the context of chaver. Chaver. And by the way, says Reb Shimon Schwab, don't take my word for it. Don't take Rashi's word for it. It's a simple pasuk in the Chumash. The Chumash talks about what is considered the most severe aveira in the Torah. The most severe aveira is what is called the mesis, the seducer. Someone who persuades someone else to serve avodah zarah. And the Torah says, don't have mercy on this person who tries to persuade you to serve avodah zarah. It doesn't matter. They could be your son. They could be your daughter. Oh, re'acha asher kenafshecha. They could be your best friend in the world, your soul friend. Who is this guy who is re'acha asher kenafshecha? Says Rashi, Ze avicha. That's your parent. Your parent in the eyes of the Torah is your best friend in the world. How this applies as a teacher has a lot of ramifications in our generation. Because if you're the child's father and mother as well, it's important to know what a father and mother is. Let me share with you another stunning insight in Akedat Yitzchak. From a simple word that Avram Avinu uses when speaking to Yitzchak Avinu. There's not that much conversation in the Torah between Abraham and Yitzchak. You'll be hard-pressed to find too many words that were said between Abraham and Yitzchak. Anybody know, how many words did Abraham and Yitzchak say to each other? You could barely count it on one hand. You could barely count it on one hand. So, God comes to Abraham, God comes to Abraham Avinu, he says, listen, Abraham. Vayomer love Abraham. Yep, Abraham says, Hineni, here I am. What can I do for you? What does the word Hineni mean? Rashi says Hineni means Lashon Zimun, a Lashon of being prepared. The Lashon Anava, a Lashon of humility. Very interesting. What else would you expect somebody to say to God? If God comes to you and says, Shalom Aleichem, what else would you say? Hineni, behold, here I am. A Lashon of humility. A little while later, Abraham and Yitzchak are headed to the Akedah, and Yitzchak's getting a little suspicious. Vayomer Yitzchak el Avraham Aviv, Vayomer Avi, Dad, are you really doing this? What does Abraham say to Yitzchak? Vayomer Hineni, behold, here I am. The same language of humility that Abraham spoke to the Master of the universe, Abraham said to his son. Says Rav Gamliel Rabinovich, who, by the way, is not only one of the leading Mikubalim today, not only the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva Shaarei HaShamayim, but one of the leading Mashpiyim, one of the leading addresses of kids at risk, youth at risk, disillusioned teenagers. Says Rav Gamliel Rabinovich, from here we learn that with the same humility that you need to speak to the Almighty, you need to speak to your children. With the same anava, with the same submissiveness that you speak to God, you need to speak to your son and daughter. And may I dare say, your talmidim, your students, your talmidim, v'talmidot. Says Rav Gamliel Rabinovich, call me whatever you want. Call me progressive. But I'm going to tell you the facts. That in most cases of disillusioned children, in most of the time, it's because they feel their parents don't dig them, don't understand them, and don't value them, and don't speak to them with humility. Rav Gamliel said something that I'm afraid to say. Okay, I won't say it. Oh, okay. No, I don't think I'm going to say it.
Say it.
So if I'm going to say it, I have to give you a bunch of disclaimers. In the second edition of Rav Gamliel's Sefer, they took it out. And I think I know why they took it out. Because it's heresy. You can't really say this. That's why I'm not saying it. But if I would say it, I would explain that the reason they took it out of the book is because you're not allowed to say it. So if I say it, make believe I never said it. Okay? Take it with many grains of salt. Take it in the context that it was offered. Rav Gamliel said that his mother would say, again, I'm not saying this, and don't repeat it. It's just between us. And if I say, I deny saying it, and even if he claims I said it, I never said it. Rav Gamliel said that his mother would say that if the Torah was written today, we're not even allowed to say that. That word, you can't say that. But if you could say it, it would say instead of Kabed et avicha v'et imecha, Kabed et bincha v'et bitecha. That's what he says. And I didn't say it.
You have to translate it now.
Oh. Instead of honor your father and mother, honor your son and daughter. Says Rav Gamliel, what we ask a child to do today, listen to this. What we ask a young man, a young woman to do today, we say, Mamala, Tatala. No, don't look at the billboards. Don't Don't follow what they're doing on the street. Don't dress like them. Don't read what they read. Don't act like them. Don't think like them. We're asking them to do Akedat Yitzchak. What we expect of a young man and a young woman today is a bigger challenge than going to Akedah. And how was Avraham successful in instilling the confidence in Yitzchak to pass Akedat Yitzchak? Because he spoke to him with honor. He spoke to him ba'anivut. Then the only way we can be successful in strengthening our children to pass the challenges of 2025 of Tafshin Pei is to speak to them the way Avraham spoke to Yitzchak. Says Rabbi Gamliel, there is no doubt that the reason Avraham was zocheh to raise a child, Yitzchak, the Gadal Hadar, is because he spoke to him ba'anivot. These are the words, if I would say it, of Rabbi Gamliel Rabinovich. Let me end off with something even more important. What is the main responsibility of a parent? What is the main responsibility of a Rebbe? So here you have a guy, he's on the roof, and he's chopping wood on the roof, he's banging nails into the roof, and his axe goes flying, and it kills somebody, b'shogeg, incidentally. Where does this guy gotta go? Arei Miklat, to a city of refuge. He has to run away because the relative of the one who was killed has the right to take retribution against the murderer b'shogeg. So you have in this Arei Miklat a home minyan, you have 100 guys, and they're there, they're stuck there, they're never allowed to leave. Until the passing of the Kohen Gadol. When the Kohen Gadol dies, then they're allowed to leave. So you can imagine there after davening in the Arei Miklat, and you have all kinds of people there in the Arei Miklat. Religious guys with long beards. Could happen. And after the tefillah, the chazan goes up to the amud and he's crying. And afterwards they make a mishaberach. Mishaberach avoteinu Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov. Moshe Aaron David Shlomo hu yaharog v'yamit et hakohen gadol ba'avur shekol hakahal mitpalalim ba'avuro b'schar zot hakadosh baruch hu yaharog oto b'mhera v'yamin amen. In English that means they pray for the death of the kohen gadol. They pray for him to die. And the Gemara asks, what did the poor kohen gadol do? That now all these guys are stuck in the Arei Miklat, in the city of refuge, until he dies. What, he's responsible for the fact that they killed b'shogeg? Why is it his problem? Now you have all these people praying for him to die. So the Gemara says it's the Kohen Gadol's fault. You know why? Because the Kohen Gadol should have prayed that while he's the Kohen Gadol, nobody kill b'shogeg. And he didn't pray that this kind of mishap didn't happen. So therefore it's his problem, and we put the onus on him, and it's a punishment to him. So the question is, where does it say in the Torah that a Kohen Gadol has to pray that nobody accidentally throws their axe and kills somebody? That's one of the responsibilities of Kohen Gadol, that he should pray that nobody kills b'shogeg. It says that in Parshat Acharei Mot. It says that in the Rambam, when the Rambam discusses the laws of the Kohen Gadol. Since when is it the responsibility of the Kohen Gadol to pray that no one kills b'shogeg? Says Reb Shlomo Volba, one of the great masters of Chinuch. From here we learn a great principle, that when you're in a position of responsibility, if you're a father, if you're a mother, if you're a Rebbe, if you're a teacher, if you're a principal, if you're a morah, your main job is to pray for the people that you are in charge of. From here we learn that anyone who's in a position of responsibility, if you're responsible for children in this world, if you're responsible for students in this world, if you're responsible for other teachers, your primary responsibility is to pray for their welfare. And as fathers and mothers, our primary job in this world is to pray for our children. Pray for our children means in the regular tefillot, whether in Birchat HaTorah, whether in the various places in the Amidah that are designated for prayers for children. If you want to know, everyone is going to get a sefer. There's a whole chapter on all the various junctures in the tefillah of when you could pray for children. But even aside from that, the job of a parent and a teacher is to pray for your children and your students all day long. You're driving carpool, you're stopped at a red light, you're pushing your wagon in the store, you have children you're responsible for, you need to pray to God, Hashem, please allow my children, my students, they should grow up with midot tovot, with good manners, with yirat shamayim, they should understand their learning, they should enjoy their learning, we should all see nachat from them. That is the main responsibility of a parent. To pray for your children, to pray for your students. Until when? Until when do I have to pray? By the way, the Brisker Rav would say that many parents, when they rock their kids to sleep, they sing ridiculous nursery rhymes, Many parents want to know, why does my kid have so much anxiety? Maybe because when they were babies, you were singing to them nursery rhymes about a guy rolling down a hill and his head falling off. I mean, that's from his earliest memories. He's haunted by the nursery rhymes he sang him. Says the Brisker Rav, I didn't sing my kids nursery rhymes. I cried Tehillim that they should grow up with Yirat Shamayim. Says the Brisker Rav, never in my life did I daven one dry-eyed Shmoneh Esrei. Every Amidah I ever said was with pouring tears that my children should grow up with Yirat Shamayim. I'll just conclude with one story, one of my favorite stories. They once came to the Stipler Gaon. You ever hear of the Stipler Gaon? Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky, the Stipler, the father of Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Chaim Kanievsky was the Gadol Hador of the last generation. And parents would come to the Stipler and say, what parenting classes could you recommend? What techniques do you recommend? And the Stipler would say, parenting classes, techniques? There are no classes, there are no techniques. There are only Tehillim and tears. You see my little boy Chayimol over here. Every day I pray that Chayimol should be a God-fearing Jew. Chayimol was already 52 years old, one of the Gedolei Hadar. So when does the job end? As long as you're breathing, as long as you have children and grandchildren, Be'ezrat Hashem, great-grandchildren, and you should walk them all down to the chuppah, b'briyut, in good health and happiness. You brought children into the world. Your job until the last moment is to pray that they grow up to be Yirat Shamayim, Yirei Shamayim, Ba'alei Midot Tovot, not only for your own children, but for the children that you have the honor to teach and to care for and to instruct and to elevate and to raise up those children as well. You're not only here to teach for them, you're here to pray for them. Be'ezrat Hashem, in the merit of all of your Mesirat Nefesh, may Hashem answer all of our tefillot for all our own children and for all the children of Klal Yisrael. We should be zocheh to see banim ubanot meirim et ha'olam b'torah u'ma'asim tovim ad biyad kol tzedek v'her b'yamino. Amen. Thank you.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.